chat, you have a couple of minutes to join us.
Sure. I will post the Discord and the Twitter messages. Oh yeah, I need to.
Yeah, this is going to be a really good show. And I don't even say that lightly. This is for real.
Yeah. Lots to talk about.
Lots to talk about with two industry professionals, which is a much better perspective than us, than Pete and I.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Although I think we're all on the same side, which is, just good.
I mean, after you read that, it's hard not to be on the same side.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Tweet's gone out, by the way. So
excellent.
DJ, I did tag Boba Studios in there as well.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
I know that we're about to tag you. We're just snapping that picture for social.
Yep. Gotta get all the socials done.
Of course, yeah. That's it's all about brand synergy these days, isn't it? Really, and social media really pushes you so far, despite how much of a hellscape Twitter's become over the last week or so.
Oh yeah.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
Talk about a dumpster fire.
Yes.
I mean, there's dumpster fires, and then there's Twitter.
Oh my gosh, watching it in real time.
Yeah, I mean, just reading about all this and see how the story unfolds and see the two different perspectives. I mean, it's like night and day.
It really is. I love the
it's
insider
like-
leaks.
If Disney could dream up a new villain, yeah, this is it. Yeah.
Thank you, Marvel Studios, for following. Thank you. Yeah,
sorry.
he is like a cartoon villain at this point.
He really is becoming that way.
Yeah, like
And it's amazing how like sometimes the like true stories can sometimes be so much more interesting than and more compelling than some of the stuff that is in Hollywood today.
Oh yes, there's a quote that says, "Fiction has to be realistic, but nonfiction can be over the top, unrealistic, as unrealistic as it actually is. But fiction has to stay realistic to be believable, and that has always cracked me up. And this is a perfect example, watching all of this unfold the way it does. But yeah, I absolutely love the leaks coming out from the developers and stuff that actually work there.
Give it a year, and then we'll have an Elon Musk Twitter movie.
Everybody's like they're signing on the dotted line right now.
All right, 2 seconds, guys. I'll be back. I'm just going to check this sound recording.
Okay. Yeah. I hope I'm not too loud. I've dropped my audio quite a bit, but I'm using stupid headphone mic because my very nice, expensive mic is too powerful for my CPU currently.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yes. Strange enough, I should have had a real mic as well, but there's some strange interference from the computers picking up a lot of noise. This one has a noise canceling feature, so it's like, I'm sorry.
No, I think it's great. It's coming through great. It actually is coming through really, really crisp and clear.
It is.
There is a small issue with the audio recording, though.
Is it you, Pete?
That would be my problem.
Yeah, because you sound like you're at the bottom of the ocean. So I think you're coming through your webcam. Mike.
Yeah, I need to check that, but it's also the fact that the voice meter is not picking up anyone else. I haven't changed my settings.
Well, there you go.
It might help.
Virtual cables.
Yeah.
Fasten, I guess.
Well, it would be a very avant-garde podcast recording.
Oh, we've done it. We have done it. We had a 2-hour stream of no audio and just us and our co-host video.
Oh no!
But what we said at the time was that it was an homage to Snoop Dogg, who did a game stream where all his audio dropped, and he did it that same week. So it was like, this is our homage to Snoop Dogg.
Right. Is that any better for me, by the way?
Oh gosh, you still sound
rumbly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh gosh.
All right. 1 second.
Oh, that's why we're here. A little bit of a
Now?
sound check.
Oh, that's better.
Okay, yeah, I just had to get the right microphone setting, I guess. Right. Let me just run this backup recording again then.
Yes.
Just chat away amongst ourselves for a little bit.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Because that's
As
what
I
we
was
did.
saying yeah, sorry, I was also saying to TJ before, Daniel, like I've literally travelled like for about 4 hours today just to be here for this recording. So,
Oh wow.
so yeah, I'm a little bit on the mentally frazzled side, but it shouldn't. Once we get through this initial stage, I should be okay.
Oh, goodness.
Oh dear.
I'm super excited to talk about that. Well, I don't want to talk about it. I want to listen to you guys talk about it because I really want to get a perspective.
I am interested, but obviously, like being a Bethesda and id Software fan, you obviously will have to weigh in at some point about it.
Yeah, I'm invested just because of the product.
Yeah, it was quite funny though on Thursday when I was talking about this to you, and when I went, so this was an interesting one. Reading this at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it was 58 minutes long. But
yeah, and I'd already read it, so.
Oh, that's why you told me you weren't going to read it then.
Yeah, because I was like, I'd already read this, but you know.
Yeah, you could have told me that on Thursday rather than just saying no.
The crazy thing is this whole thing with Mick Gordon, actually he alluded to it last year.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then he had to stop because, like, I guess because of NDA. That's me making an assumption because he quit talking about it and he just backed away and said, "I don't want any part of this." And I was like, "Oh."
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
So this coming out isn't a surprise. I mean,
Yeah.
it's still shocking, but also not a surprise, if that makes sense. So.
Right, 2 seconds. I'm just gonna go and look it now to make sure it's fine.
Sound check. 1 2 1 2.
Yeah. Of course, I've got my fan going, but hopefully it's not too loud. It's really warm over here in Ireland, which is insane in November. I don't know how it is with you guys.
It was like 70 here yesterday. Today it's not, but yesterday I was like, ugh.
That's just too warm.
It's Celsius, man.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, see, 70 would be about 20.
I think
about 20. About 20, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
20.
So warm for
Just
November.
Under, yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm located in Japan, Saitama. So we're about the same between. Actually, sometimes it's like 8.
Yeah, that's
8 to 18 degrees.
That's how it is here right now. Is it normally like that though? Is that a normal average, or is that warm for this year?
For this time of year, it's kind of normal, but it's also very windy. So that's why if you hear some strange shutter noise, then it's like, okay, crap.
Oh,
We're
there you
go. We're the weather phenomenon out here. Yeah.
Of course, I'm coming to you live from a basement. So.
Sounds like it's coming through all right on the Twitch stream, by the way.
Oh, excellent.
And on the backup recording.
Okay, we've got plenty of viewers. If you want to say hi, feel free to say hi. We tend to save questions till the end, unless they're just really, really relevant. So our lovely, lovely listeners know that it is about 7:45 for me and Pete at night. It's like almost 5 in the morning for Daniel. And TJ, what time is it over there?
Oh, it's a sunny 3 p.m.
So TJ's just smooth sailing.
Oh yeah, no. I feel bad for all of you guys being at the extremes, and I'm over here like, oh, what am I gonna have for dinner later?
That's great. Okay. Well, chat, we'll give you about 4 more minutes if you want to say hi. Were you gonna say something, Pete? Did I interrupt you? I do that a lot. Okay. Oh, look there. Yep, we've got several people saying hello. Bueno to Brent, our Chad, as we call him.
Mr. Chad. How are you doing, Chad?
Ellie or
Ellie
Eli?
K,
I don't know.
Eli K, dear.
Yep.
Hello.
Hello.
First time chat from them. Hello.
Howdy. Oh, Nana's there. Hello, Nana.
Hello, Nana.
Good to see you. I'm going to pour myself a drink, and then we'll get started. Look, I as we know, as our listeners frequently know, I do have a little tipple on Sundays, but I'm trying to do better. 70 degrees there too. Where are you at? Not specifically, of course. General area. Tell us your name and address. But yeah, they make I am not familiar with minis because I normally drink wine. So I've discovered these tiny little things.
That's what we like to call airplane bottles.
Yes, and they keep me from going a little overboard, which is good.
Yeah,
no, Brent.
So TJ, yeah, you're not known for Kiley's antics on stream. She tends to get through a bottle of wine per episode.
I am in Ireland. That is quite normal. But I am changing my ways as I approach.
That's a normal breakfast routine in Ireland for sure.
Oh, you're not wrong. You're actually not wrong.
It's where the phrase "it's 12 o'clock somewhere in the world" comes from.
It literally is like that. Yes, if you go to a restaurant at 11 a.m., people will be ordering cocktails, and it's not weird. So, Brent, but I'm sad to hear that, Brent, that your battery's low. But
That's a shame. That is a shame, but obviously check the old VOD and the podcast players as of when this is done. It'll be out tomorrow morning, I guess, for audio listeners.
Yes, this is a really, really great one. I say that all the time, but this is.
Yeah. Shall we get the show on the road, though?
I think we shall do that. I'm gonna pull
Sorry, we have overrun slightly a bit because we have technical issues.
Let's see. I want to get on my
episode 140.
140. I'm taking my notes right quick. And then we will start. Pete, if you want to do a countdown.
I will do. I'm to start recording now. So, 3, 2.
Welcome to Rapid Reviews Radio Podcast Episode 140. I hope 140. Pete, am I correct? Is that 140?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Did only tell you 30 seconds ago.
I know, but you know things, they don't stay in the brain. Even though I wrote it down and it's right in front of me, and I still had to ask. But I'm your co-host, Kiley Wilde, and I'm joined by my ever-present co-host, Pete Beckett.
Hello.
And today we have two very, very special guests today, and I don't say that lightly. This is so cool. This topic is, well, I'm not going to say the topic is cool. It needs in-depth processing, but it is a hot topic to talk about. We have a returning guest, Daniel Lindholm. If you want to say hi.
Good morning, everyone. Ohayo gozaimasu.
As you can say, Daniel has graciously joined us from the other side of the world, where it is 5 a.m. So we thank him so much for being here. And he has been here before. Go check out that episode because that gives the kind of background of who he is, where he's from, and he's just a really cool guy. But we're joined by a new guest that we're very excited to have as well. TJ Martin, who is a composer and sound designer for Boba Studios. Hello, TJ.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
We're very happy, very excited to have you here as our first-time guest. But what I like to do generally is when I open the show, I go around, check in with everyone, see how their week's been, just a word or two. It kind of gets everyone kind of loosey-goosey in the mood for a really great show, and I'll get our audience all ready. So, Daniel, I'll start with you. How has your week been?
Oh, well, I've been working from home for the last 2 or 3 weeks. Sure, I really would like to be in the studio, but right now there are some issues happening there. So, I mean, that's why I love being portable with my little new MacBook Pro here.
Nice.
But then I also enjoy watching some new movies. Actually, I watched Weird Al Yankovic's biopic.
Ooh.
Is it good? I want to watch it. Is it good?
It is fantastic. Or Daniel Radcliffe just blows my mind. Yeah, it's one of the best things I've ever seen. I've never laughed so much in my entire life.
Okay.
Good, so good.
So I highly recommend that.
I'll be going during the week then at some point.
And then on the gaming side, I've been dealing with Fight Night Express and Sifu.
Okay.
nice.
Okay, yeah. How's that? Is that as hard as everyone says it is? Is it? It looks
Oh
great.
boy, yeah. I mean, it's beautiful, but yes, people say it's a really short game, but it's just like Fight Night Express that you really had to grind and redo levels to get better and better,
I like
and
that.
and
Yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful looking game, and I'm playing it on the Switch,
Oh,
which
Wow.
right.
Okay.
is some people have said the Switch version may not be as good, but I think it's just amazing what it can do, and I'm on
Yeah.
a Switch Lite, so.
Oh, right.
Beautiful graphics, beautiful animation, great sound, and Fight Night Express is just awesome. Yeah,
That's really
Nice.
cool.
unlocking my inner John Wick, so to speak.
Very good.
So
Oh,
that's
that's
Amazing.
that's
excellent.
basically what my week has been so far.
That's fabulous. That sounds great. TJ, what about you? Up to any games, movies, anything new?
I mean, I've been watching Andor and I've been playing Tales of Arise, which I've been liking a lot.
I've heard good
Um,
things about Tales of
it
Arise.
the gameplay is so much fun, and the music, oh my god! Like, I mean, like any JRPG, right? It's just like you
Oh.
turn on the game and it's like, oh, heaven.
Oh,
Um,
I love music.
But otherwise, just been a busy week juggling a whole bunch of things. My studio's had a bunch of events this week showing off our puzzle and adventure game, Squirrely Rabbit, and it's just
Nice.
been a great week.
That is
Amazing.
very good to hear. I love it. I love it. And also, side note, yes, please go watch Andor. It's amazing.
It's so good.
So
that
good.
last episode, I'm like, oh my god.
Okay, so
It's
full
really good.
disclosure, I had a few episodes downloaded ready to watch and didn't even
haven't
watch
watched
them,
it
to be fair. But I'm getting, like, I've been told by so many people to watch it, and I'm like
Yeah.
anti Star Wars at the moment, so it might be enough to crack my shell to actually go and watch it.
I like we said the other day, Pete. It's the most not Star Wars show. It's so good.
Okay.
So good.
Cool.
All right, well, I had to give myself a dive into that one.
It's
Yep.
really good.
It is. It
the
is.
subtext is
Okay, there's far too many recommendations now to ignore it.
Pete, that brings us to you. How about your week? Games,
it's-
new things.
Okay, it's been exhausting. So most of what I've been doing over this weekend is I've been travelling to Nottingham. I went to go and take in a game of football with the other co-host from the other podcast I do, Kurt. Met him for the first time in person, which was very cool. So
That is very cool.
shame about the result. We didn't win. But I had a
Wow.
night in Nottingham. It was good fun. Managed to travel home. Played some Shredder's Revenge actually on the way there and back and completed it. So not
And on
going to
the
complain
Switch
at
this
that.
time. And you said on the
Yes.
Switch this time. Yeah, so that's good.
Yeah. So before I played it on the Xbox because it was on Game Pass, of course, but I'd bought the copy of the Switch because I wanted to support the developers. And yeah, the Switch version runs really, really well as well, apart from one level that may have some slowdown.
Wow.
Which, I mean, there's quite a lot going on the screen at that time, and sort of to be expected from a smaller dev studio as well, who are essentially doing 4 versions of the game.
Right. That's
I
very,
can let them
very
off with
true.
that. So, you know, a minor hiccup here and there I can understand.
Yeah, for sure. And Pete, you may have lost the game, but you won in friendship.
Yes, I did. Which I'll be talking to Kurt more about over the week. So
Oh, there you go. Should have done a live show from there. But
I wanted to, but we didn't have the time.
I know. But yes, so mostly I've just been playing mobile games while my workroom is being worked on because I can't get back to work until my workroom is fixed. There's no ceiling, so
That's important.
Work-life
Yeah.
balance,
That's
you know.
kind of hard.
yeah. At least it has
I mean-
walls now.
We can spin it. Amazing skylight.
There you go.
Tremendous
Oh my
open
gosh.
space.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. High ceilings.
Really high ceilings at this
Great
point.
night view.
Susceptible
Oh.
to the odd bit of damp here and there, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just a little bit. Just a little bit of mold on the
Reminds
But
me
hey,
of
hey,
like an episode of the
natural
Young
foliage.
Ones.
Oh,
Hey,
the
this is
young ones
Neil.
great.
Would you like to come down for a bite?
Very good, very good. Well, I am going to toss it over to Pete to give us a little background of what the core subject of, or core theme rather, of today's show is about, because it's actually a serious topic, but we're kind of unserious here at times. But I kid you not, you guys want to, whether you're watching us or listening to us from home or on your way to work or at work, that happens too, you really want to tune into this because it is a true insight into, into a world that a lot of us just gamers don't really have, an idea about. And I'm always fascinated about behind the scenes stuff. But Pete, if you can give us a little tiny bit of a background, and then we'll move forward.
Sure thing. So, let me set you the scene where I woke up the other morning, waiting to start work. I'd woken up early after doing I've posted to a late shift for that day, so I'd woken up too early, was going about my normal day, and just happened to see someone retweet something on Twitter. Of course, despite the hellscape that it is at the moment, I'm still getting through things, and Daniel knows, as per example, how I am on Twitter. Yeah. It's how we got contacted before to do the episode, just by randomly finding something. So anyway, it just so happened that Mick Gordon, the composer from Doom and Doom Eternal, as well as many other things across the length and breadth of his career that I can't go into details about because I'm not as knowledgeable about that. But most recently, he has done Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. And it's why I mention these, because it's the main topic of what we're going to be talking about. And this one has been 2.5 years in the making.
Yes,
so
that's true.
to give you a short rundown of the timeline of events of how things have come to pass, and then we can talk about the statements that was had from each individual person that was reflected in this story. So we know that Doom Eternal was announced at E3 2018. Where it was revealed once again that Mick Gordon would be coming back to reprise the soundtrack, and at that time wasn't actually known, but would be doing the OST for it too, which was the case with Doom 2016 too. A very well-received soundtrack and multi-award-winning soundtrack. Let's put that in there.
That's very important. That's very important to note.
To which we then saw the first footage of it at QuakeCon 2018. The game was originally supposed to have a release of 22nd of November 2019. But it was, in that time, they'd also announced a collector's edition for the game. A physical collector's edition. It included a statue, and most importantly for this particular line of the story, the CD for the OST. Now, there's a lot of discussion about that OST, but we can go into that in more detail. Actually, we call that foreshadowing. So after that announcement, there was a few months of silence, as to sort of be expected, until Bethesda and id Software announced that the game was being delayed on October the 8th, 2019, where they announced that the game would be having several months of polish before it was due to release on Animal Crossing Day, that is 20th of March 2020.
I remember it well.
Yes, the memes were aplenty those days, and we loved them all. So it was stated that there would be a physical OST that would be included within the collector's edition at launch. But they announced on the 12th of March that they weren't going to hit that particular time scale for the 20th of March physical release. So they asked for a few more weeks. It was then the soundtrack was then released on the 19th of April 2020, but there was no official confirmation provided for when the physical version of said OST would be announced. So, with that out of the way, we now get into the main crux of the issue, and that pulls us through to June of 2020. So, height of the pandemic, we're sitting at home, we're all enjoying games and life at home, I guess. I say enjoy. We
so
did.
Many games.
Some did.
I loved
however,
it.
So I need to put this into perspective. So we have two main players within this story. Obviously, Bethesda and id Softworks are involved because of the development studios and the parent company, and let's say ZeniMax as well for this particular situation. We then have Marty Stratton, who was one of the directors, I believe, and executive producers at id Software. So he goes onto Reddit, weirdly, in June of 2020, posts up via his own account a very lengthy statement about the addressing the issues surrounding the OST. Now, I remember articles coming out at the time around about this, and obviously they took a very singular stance on this one and pretty much condemned Mick Gordon for his either lack of a rebuttal or wanted to take the side of ZeniMax and id. No idea what was going on there. But there were a lot of articles that sort of, let's say, may not have done their due diligence and actually asked for comments, or Mick wasn't exactly forthcoming with comments. We don't know. I'm not too sure, so I can only speculate from here. However, this now brings us on to, I've just noticed there's an error in my document. November of 2022, not 2020. So 2.5 years later, Mick Gordon decides to finally address the Reddit post in a lengthy 58-minute Medium post that not only included words, but lots of screenshots and what we like to call in the industry receipts.
Yes.
So, this is where I kick over to our guests, who may want to bring up anything that they may have read in said document or the initial Reddit statement. So I guess we'll go to Daniel on this one about the Reddit statement that was posted out by Marty Stratton.
Well, I mean, reading it through, and for him to be unchallenged for the last 2 years, and especially posting it on Reddit, for me, that's a red flag already, because it's fan based, right? And a lot of fires and fuel and hate can really be on that platform. So for me, I would say Reddit is not my go-to, and we all know from past experiences that things can get out of hand over there, for sure.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, Daniel. I must just add one final thought about this. Sorry, was that this was posted on the official Doom subreddit as well. So just wanted to clarify that too. No, it doesn't, but I wanted to add that context. So.
I mean, for things now, I want to hear from Mick Gordon's side and the timeline and all that stuff. That really changes everything. And as you said, he has the receipts to prove his innocence and almost showing the more incompetence of this other individual. But for me, do I see myself work for id Software in the future? Well, if this guy is not there, of course, I would gladly like to give myself a try for something, but I don't think I'm the guy. So I'm not blacklisting myself from the company. But it's so sad to see that one individual can make or break another person who has a really good work ethic. Really loves Mick Gordon's experimental phases before he even starts writing, and to get inspiration from not only modern industrial techno, but also go to the Swedish band Meshuggah for the guitar riffs and all that stuff. For me, it was a match made in hell. So I really enjoyed what Mick Gordon has done, and I think whatever happened for the second game, it was a clusterfuck of just bad planning, and right now I'm also writing a music for his game. But for me, it's very important that what is the song about? What's the location? Who am I writing? Like, is it a character-driven thing, or is it an ambience, like a world-building kind of track? I think all of these things would really be needed before I even start writing a track, and of course sign a contract first. So so that's my short take on this issue, but we're going to go into details later. I suppose.
Of course. Yes. So TJ, did you want to have any thoughts initially about obviously everything you've seen regarding this situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the biggest thing is I think a lot, like I'm coming from a much more indie perspective, having worked with a lot of indie studios and having like, that's sort of where my network is. It's really interesting to see the way that like different people approach, direction and that sort of thing. And I think about how like with music in particular, it's ironically, it's sort of like a silent actor in a way, in the way that like you're not always actively aware of it being there, but it's always acting on you. Whether, it's a musical choice that's actual music, or it's a musical choice of like, we're not going to have music here. And I think like one thing that particularly struck me in this whole situation is how early in the process they were writing music, but specifically writing finalized music, because when you're working with a game, day one, not everything's going to be figured out, and there's a lot that's going to change and evolve. Game making is a very complicated and involved process that involves a lot of iteration. And being there early can be great if you're doing what the rest of the team is doing and experimenting and trying stuff out and sort of figuring out what the soundtrack is going to be in the larger vibe of things. But when you're required to deliver finalized tracks like he was from, the start of production, when not everything is figured out, a lot of the issues that it sounds like he was having comes from the fact that like he would deliver all these finalized tracks, and of course they would need to be redone because nobody had a good idea of what was going on at that point, 2 years before release. And so that's one of the big things that personally struck me. But it's very, very this whole thing is a mess, and it's going to be interesting to really get into the details of it all.
Well, that's some of my questions. Both of you, of course, I want to hear your perspectives, but I guess we'll throw it to Daniel and then back to TJ. Back and forth. I'm used to working with a larger group. So
we can do a little bit of tennis.
Yeah, exactly. We'll do a little tennis. There you go. But I do want to ask, out of pure curiosity, to help our audience understand. Let's start. Of course, you don't have to go into fine detail or anything like that. But what's the process, the normal, the average process for, no, let me rephrase that. First, explain to us the difference between the sound design for the game versus the OST, the soundtrack. Because as someone who doesn't know anything, who comes into it, I think, oh, they just take the songs from the game and they put it on a CD. That can't be right. So, Daniel, if you want to walk us through a little bit of that, and then we'll throw it to TJ and get his perspective as well in the indie scene.
All right, let's try to define the word sound design. Basically, this is the moment. There are actually two kinds of sound design. Mm-hmm. We can call one. We call musical sound design. That's when we're trying to tweak sounds on the synthesizers to create new brushes of paint to use in our musical adventures here. And then you have game sound design, which is Foley, explosions, all that's
effects.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an indie game developer, so sometimes you, as a music composer, will also dabble in that kind of sound design as well. But that's not our major thing. But probably me and TJ, we're more like the synthesizer sample, like try to create new tools for us to use as musicians, right?
Right.
But then writing music for a game, let's take my best case is Resident Evil 6, because that's a AAA thing that's would probably been done the same if ID Software or whoever was in charge would have waited. As you said, now Mick had to rewrite a lot of stuff because he was already from the beginning, and they thought, hey, if we have full tracks right now, then we don't need to spend much time on music. But that's why in production circles we have pre-production, production phase, and then post-production. And usually that's where in film, that's where the composer comes in and have maybe about, well, if it's a great movie where he gets to express himself, maybe about 10 months. But before that, he might be involved a little bit at pre-production stage, maybe get a script or something he can read from, try to come up with themes and things like that. But then they say, okay, we got the picture, we lock down, the same thing happens with game. But of course, me and TJ probably will work against alpha footage, like a stick figure walking through some kind of very bare bones. But they tell you at least, imagine this is a jungle, this is some like the space. Here's how our character moves that might give us an idea about the tempo or how we
Wow.
can describe the character and music, and I think that's what I do, especially for Resident Evil 6. So when Resident Evil 6 came to me, we were about 2 years away from release,
Right. Okay.
and
Okay.
so we still had a little bit of time, but they already managed to solidify. Okay, for this character we need this kind of sounds. For this character we need that kind of sound, and so they've broken down everything. Like they have already figured out what was needed before we even got there. So that was a huge, like, yeah, okay, I don't need to figure out what I need to
Yeah.
look for sound wise, right?
Mhm.
And that's how we got, and that's how it should have been. They should have figured all things out, but they went the completely backwards way, and of course, that's just wasting a great talent like Mick Gordon.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, okay, that sound worked for the previous game, but what if this one looks different? We we never got to see that, right?
Right.
And so in Mick's defense, I can tell you, I mean, sometimes I want to be in production, pre-production stage. At least I can do some sketches, but that's not supposed to be the real thing. That's just ideas.
Right.
But the guy, Stratton or whatever his name
Yeah.
is, he has. We can use that without his knowledge. And for me, I would never. Yeah, as Mick said, these are demos just
He was
not to
very
be sold. Yeah, he was very specific about
very
that.
very
Don't
yes.
use without my
Don't
permission.
use with.
These so that kind of where my heart breaks, because then you don't get the best of it, you know.
Yeah.
But that's just my take on it. How about you, TJ?
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I mean, like, one thing that is really drilled into us as composers, and I mean, it's drilled into like industry professionals, but also by like just working with people, is that when you send them something that doesn't sound real, a lot of people that aren't musicians can't really see through that. And so you try to send like the best product possible, and you can hear some of the things that were put out in the final soundtrack that were demos, and they sound fantastic,
Yeah,
but they're
they do.
demos.
Right. Okay.
You know?
Okay.
And so it's like, even though they sound fantastic, they don't have the extra polish. They don't have that extra, like, everything to really make that a release. And so them putting that out there is kind of a slap in the face in a lot of ways. But also, one thing that I want to get into a little bit is that, and he mentions it a little bit in his article, which I'm very old-fashioned, so I printed it out and highlighted it when I read it. It is 60 pages. It's very long.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I knew it was a long read.
Wowzers. Okay.
Wow,
Everyone's done their prep work then.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to study really hard for this one.
Yeah.
The one thing that he gets into a little bit is the interactive nature of games, and the way that, like, if you think like a movie like Star Wars, for example, right? Luke is gonna walk, you know, and be on that hill and look into the sun at the same time every single time you watch it. But if you were to play a video game, where you walk and when you do these different events is never set. It's always up to the player interaction.
Right.
And so the music has to reflect that, and the music has to be adaptable enough so that, like, oh, the player's going to go off over here and do this for 10 minutes instead of following the main storyline. Okay, the music needs to move to reflect that. Or anything that you could conceive that could happen, the music needs to be able to reflect that. And so when you give music, they used WWise, which is a middleware that we also use at Bova Studios. And what that allows you to do is you can, like, take the music and chop it up into little pieces, and it'll just be able to reorder them, be able to figure out, like, mixing it and do all these different things that can allow it to react. But what that means is that there's never really a file that is the track. There are like 50 files that are the track.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Okay, that's really, really interesting, because that was the one thing I didn't really get when I was reading through all the Mick Gordon stuff. So it's good to get some clarification on that one.
Absolutely. Yeah, because that's like I was saying, in my very simple simplistic brain, it was, oh, this file goes on a CD and now it's a soundtrack. Okay, no. This is why.
And to be fair, there are games like that. You think like old RPGs, for example, or modern RPGs that are. Undertale's a great example where like you can break into that game and you can take the music files out of there, and they're pretty much the same files as the final soundtrack ones. They're not exactly the same. They are different.
There's a little polishing
but
or something, but
yeah, but they're basically the same. And those aren't broken up because Undertale's not the sort of game. It's not the right style to have something that's going to be super interactive because it just has a looping track because that was the style.
Yeah.
And to be fair, it's a bit more of a linear path rather than some of the more explorational games where you need to have the music to adapt to it.
Absolutely. But yeah, it's very complicated and yeah, it's very complicated.
Go
ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, exactly what he said here. Like when I did RE6, we had to write 2 versions of the situation.
Okay.
And so basically, all right, let's try to make it as simple as we can. Like the most complicated track I did for the game was the VTOL mission, Flight of the VTOL.
Yes.
And I think it contained 6 different parts. You have an intro that's the opening cinematic, and then that intro is going to transition into the first loop, and that's when you're flying around shooting missiles and all that stuff. And then when you're done with that, you have to find another transition point. So another piece of music needs to be created for that, and that's going to lead into the next loop. And now you're suddenly covering fire, or you're the other character running around on the ship, and then there's another transition, another loop, and then the ending. For ending cinematic. We just did them in blocks, and then they said, okay, for the soundtrack, now we have to do a second file. So now we have to try to combine everything into a musical way that makes sense.
Right.
But we also worked the other way around. We wrote the entire suite first with all the loops as a song, and then told us now break them up into loops. So we had to work like either one way or the other way. Now adaptive music, as TJ said here, is the A and O for today's modern piece of storytelling through music in games. But as he said, it's not one track, which that would have been the thing with RE6, but they ran out of memory, so they played everything for us in stereo.
Right.
So we did not get the cinematic feel that we wanted. So as I said there in the old podcast, for people who didn't hear it, I was kind of broken because we wanted to be like Uncharted. And I think Uncharted is the best way to explain adaptive music. Like when you hear a piece of music that might be a 1-minute loop, but after each minute they filter in new instruments just to make a variation of that. But it's still just 1 minute of music being produced here. And that's very, very flexible, and that's very, very cool. So adaptive music, that is the term. TJ Martin, nice work, man.
Thank you. To add one, sorry.
No, you go right ahead. We're loving this.
To add one more wrinkle and sort of jumping off what you just said, Daniel, one other wrinkle is storage space. Which, when you think about a game, everyone complains about file sizes nowadays, how file sizes are huge. But, like, yeah, the amount of stuff that goes into a game is massive. And I always go back to remembering whenever I'm writing or, mastering or implementing, I remember one of my first teachers was someone that was working on Civ 5 over at Firaxis.
Oh, nice.
And one thing that they talked about, it's wonderful.
It is. It's really, really atmospheric and perfect.
Yeah. When they were teaching us WYs, one thing that they were mentioning was about all the optimization, because over there, their entire memory allowance for all of the music of the game was something along the lines of like 35 megabytes. It was very, very small, which meant there had to be a lot of compression on the files. And so taking those files from the game and then putting them into the soundtrack, of course, the studio would have the uncompressed versions of the files, but it's just another wrinkle into the how different the actual soundtrack is from the sound that you're getting from the game. It really is night and day, and it takes a lot of work to be able to present that well.
because that was one thing that I really sort of had to learn, like, very, very quickly. Obviously, when it came to audio editing, and for full disclosure, I have no background in music apart from wanting to play a bass a long time ago and playing pretty badly. But through doing this podcast and a few others, obviously you've had to learn about audio engineering and sound editing and all that. And the one thing that always surprised me the first time around is how massive sound files are. And that was a big shock, especially when you're exporting to a WAV file, that the files themselves are tiny, like could be small by comparison, and then the whole package comes out to almost triple, maybe quadruple the size of what you've put into it. And it was massively surprising. So I can't imagine like the sort of constraints they must have had to have done in terms of compression with the NES, the 8-bit, the 16-bit generations. But now you've got all the space in the world, but most of them are taken up by graphics. So in terms of that, like, how much file size do you actually get in a modern game, like in terms of the music and sound?
Well, I mean, like, if I do an average, I would say when I work in my software, I think every software process sounds a little bit different, but if I break everything down into sound files, it's hard to say. But let's say in general, like a 3-minute piece of song, and then how many layers you have of each instrument.
Right.
Like, say for me, let's say 36 tracks, which is kind of medium for a game soundtrack. But I guess you can get up to, like, depending. Now also, this is the thing that could be different, that can decide file size, of course, is the bit rate. And what kind of frequency you're using as well. And that's something I always ask the client, how do you want the files delivered? And they always ask me, okay, 24-bit, 48 kilohertz. And that increases the file size by amount of maybe another plus 20 to 35% in file size. So, but I would say, yes, like you said, audio files is probably the largest files you can generate in a short amount of time. So I would say an average, maybe up to 2 to 3 gigabytes for one song, depending on the file size and how many instruments you have, right?
Wow, okay.
So you're running out of disk space really quickly, and that's a problem for all of us here. Like, I need something for my sample libraries, and I need some space for my project, and that's why we have to try to separate our hard drives from each other a lot.
One of those skills you don't learn in music school, hard drive management.
Right?
Yeah.
Seems like it's one of those things that should be taught, but you learn on the job.
Nobody ever told me about how many hard drives I'd need when I started this podcast.
So, okay, again, we're dealing with limited understanding over here. So in this case, in this particular case, with the Doom soundtrack, I know that Stratton refers to Chad a couple of times. What a name.
I mean, Mick also mentions Chad as well, and he was like the lead audio engineer, I think, on the project.
Well, okay, yes. So
I believe that's the case.
My question is this: is that, and you guys' various experience, is it normal to have a main creator and a backup creator? It's kind of my simplistic terms here, because he kept referring to, I'm going to use Chad's tracks instead, which I found very odd, again, as an outsider watching this. Is that a common practice to have, like, 2 people working on a soundtrack, or a sound design, rather, type thing?
Me first?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Actually, let TJ go first.
Okay, TJ, you go for it.
I would say, and I'm coming from a bit of a more indie background, so a little bit of salt, but I would say no, that's not very normal.
Okay.
But I think, like, the thing that really strikes me as abnormal, and also I want to, I'm not going to run anyone through the mud or anything. Yes. We don't know how much other work. I mean, he's the lead audio designer. How much other work he had to do in order to get the game out. But one thing is that, like, when you're working for a client, especially a client like, a big studio, they own everything, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And you don't really get to retain.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you can have the files, but like you don't own like
Yeah.
your, DAW files, your stems, all those things are owned by the company. And he talked that this was the case in this case, where like he was required to not only send in like, oh, here are finalized tracks and here are demos, but also all of the stems. And all of the stems, by the way, are basically like effectively single instrument tracks of every single track. And so like you have 7 different audio files that when you play them at the same time create the one audio file, so that they can mash it up and they can have different layers of like, oh, there's this enemy coming from over here, we're going to have a new layer of the music sort of come in on top of this, and that sort of thing. But they had all of that, which means that like all the same stuff that he was working with on his end, they had on their end. And so the idea of like taking these heavily compressed files and like just being like, oh, these are the only things we have to work with, we have nothing else that we can use to master these, is a little crazy.
I found it odd that Stratton says, let me find, I just lost it. But he says, we don't have access. There it is. I'm quoting Stratton here. Alternatively, when mixing and mastering for an OST, Mick starts with his source material, parentheses, which we don't typically have access to. And remixes for the OST to ensure the highs and lows are not clipped, as seen in his 12 OST tracks. So is that... I don't really see... No, I'm going to leave my opinion out of it. So is it normal... Daniel will go with that, I guess, for you. Is it normal to... they don't have access to the whole material? Is that pretty normal to start with? You have your sketch, as you refer to it, but it's yours, and they don't have access to it. Is that pretty typical?
In the beginning, I mean, we have tried to send our minds and thoughts over musically with a single stereo file, like that.
Yes.
And I say, hey, here's my ideas for the track with your directions that you've given me. And once you say, okay, this is good, you can now stem it out. And depending on who's in charge or whatever the game company is, they might have their own little stem out chart. Because sometimes you don't want to have too many audio tracks. So that's maybe now you have to try to figure out, okay, maybe we have bright percussion, dark percussions. We have every separate brass element, trumpet, trombones, tubas, whatever, and then a string section, maybe high string, low string, and then maybe a synthesizer area with like the high sounds and low sounds. And then you just try to maybe compress what you have, like maybe say 60 different instruments into compromises of 12 channels. So there's a balancing act happening here too. And for me, I like to mix my tracks. So the audio engineer does not need to do much. But in the end, it all comes down to the mixing engineer anyway for certain things. Like, I mean, of course, working indie, that means I have more control over my music and how I want it to deliver and how it's going to sound in the end anyway. But when you're working as a contractor outside as a freelance, I have to trust the people over at the company that they're dealing with my files exactly the way they want all the other composers. And now, here's the thing. This is why it's so different between Western developers and here in Japan. Like, okay, so we had, technically, I thought we were going to be 4 composers for each campaign, right?
Okay, yes.
But in the end, we were like 4 foreigners and 20 Japanese composers for one game.
Right. Okay.
And it's crazy. Everybody gets credit, but for different reasons, maybe not others are getting credited as composers, but maybe as a SID programmer or as a musical sound designer or whatever, but they're still in the game. But yeah, we were like 24 composers for one game, which is too much.
Yes. Yes. That's
There's no consistency.
Okay, see, this is where I was going with this. I was very confused because as you read more of what Stratton wrote, he talks about Chad and Mick working together, and they worked together, but doing two separate things, and so they combine.
Yeah. Now that's a thing. So we have to take the term like what do you mean he's a co-composer or a co-producer of the track, because he didn't do anything musically or technically to the tracks.
Right.
And as we already article, like actually I was listening to Doom today and the Doom Eternal soundtrack, and wow, they're two completely different experiences.
Yes, very much. Yes. A lot of reviewers at the time noted that, which is why it stuck out in my mind and why I followed Mick after we reviewed the game ourselves.
I can also tell you from trying to find the samples of music for that video review, there was a distinct difference between 2016 and Doom Eternal's soundtracks in terms of its quality.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like they did reuse one of the songs from the first Doom game, BFG.
BFG Division.
BFG Division, and then listening to the other one, and I did just that. I was like, wow, this sound muffled and distorted beyond belief. And what could have happened here is that, oh yeah, we have this track, but let's try to master it one more time. So it's like a double exposure of sound that's happening, and that's why it's so compressed and muffled. And that's not how it should be. And when we looked at the waveforms, you see that Mick Gordon's soundtrack for Doom 2016, you have all these definition, all this clarity. You can see the waveform. But with a new one, you don't. It's just, as we call it, bricked sound file.
Yeah, I was going to say now, that as someone obviously seen this sort of thing when doing editing myself, all I saw was like a small line that then slightly built up, and then this just big chunk of audio that just looked really out of place to me as someone who's dabbles in audio editing.
I was gonna say, for our video review, we had access to the press kits, so we had access to their version of the released audio, and yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah,
great.
I've seen it when I've had like low sound files that are not of great quality, and when you try to mix them down, it does say that you're compressing a lousy file. So I sort of imagine that's kind of what it was.
Yeah. So would this be? Well, I was gonna say, would this be then very typical? The time frame that they gave him and Chad, I'd say, because I think they were working as a team, really. For the OST, is that a typical time frame that a company requests? TJ, would you like to take this
one? Having worked in mostly indie dev situations, I don't think I can take this one, so I think this one's Daniel.
Okay, all right. I mean, for me, it all happened in parallel. That's why they said, okay, you've written the song first. That's going to be the album thing. And now you're going to break these things up. That's going to be for the in-game. But the most interesting part is, like, for me, or actually for Capcom, they wanted our files to be as uncluttered as possible. Don't do any compression or any kind of like effect that is like taking away all the dynamics from mix. Let the game audio engine do that. So that's the plan. So we try to just deliver the crispiest waveforms that we can do. That's not distorted. That is not like over compressed. I'm sure some basses or guitars for effect can be compressed. That's no problem. But in general, the entire mix, that's up to the company to do the rest. I just try to perform a ground mix. So basically, this is a starting point where you guys can start mixing the instruments. Where you take it from there, it's in their hands, because now this is the property of the company. I have nothing more to do with that.
It's very similar to art design.
But indie games, I guess, as I said, we have more responsibility how it's going to sound in the final product. So that means that we also mix and master the tracks yourself. But I, since I'm doing kind of like my first or second indie game right now, I've always been fascinated if I should do this final step that we call mastering.
Right.
That's what you usually do for an album before we print it because it may sound awesome.
Yeah.
Every track will,
Right.
instead of sounding like this normal, we can actually punch up the sound to sound more wide, more stereo depth, even though we have a printed stereo file right now. So we can actually, from a simple stereo file, we can enhance it somewhat to sound good on different systems as well.
Okay.
And for a game, I never heard music being mastered for the game in game. I always think of it as that's like an album thing that we do.
Right.
Okay.
But TJ, do you master your
Yeah,
tracks for indie games?
I was gonna say I would like to hear a little bit of perspective if you wouldn't mind sharing,
Yeah.
TJ, about the indie process, because again, totally, this is totally behind the scenes stuff that we as gamers are not aware of, and it's so interesting, complex.
I mean, yeah. As far as mastering goes, I do a level of mastering. I don't do nearly as much mastering as I would do if I was to like put out, like when we like are like, oh, here's a new track for the game, check this out. I do a lot more mastering for that. Usually what I'm doing is I'm doing sort of like a light mastering to make sure. So I'm sure that you guys being, working in podcasts, you guys know about decibels, your dBs.
Yeah.
But there are also these things called LUFTs, LUFTs, I think is the acronym, which measure something called loudness, which is basically literally how loud do we perceive something. And so what I do when I'm mastering for a game is I try not to so for our game Squirrely Roo Rabbit, all of the audio I try to be coming out at around negative 15 LUFS or so, which is about like the standard for YouTube. I think YouTube might be a little bit louder than that, but it's around that area. The musical track itself, I do a little bit under that. I do that at around like negative 20 or so. And I just keep those all the same because it keeps, I do a little bit of mastering to make sure that like all of those are coming out at that loudness so that when I put things into WYs and I put like these different elements together, there's nothing, there's nothing that is going to surprise me, right? Like I'm not going to put it in a music file and be like, oh my God, that music file is way too loud, or oh my God, these files are way too soft. I have to turn it up a lot. And
so it's like consistency then.
Right. That's where I aim for versus I'm not going through and doing all of like a lot of the things like really, really trying to like get it to a perfect state. A lot of that I'm going to do actually in WYs when I'm also like doing it with the sound effects and seeing like, oh, how are things lining up? How are things, sounding against the sound effects, and how does like the whole game sound? Are there any frequencies that are popping up way too much that are sort of like bulking together, or areas where it sounds like a little bit bare in frequencies? Or I do most of that side of mastering in WYs.
That is really blowing my mind. How much layers? Not a pun. How many layers go into this? That we don't know. So even approaching this, I was gonna say fiasco. That's not really debacle. I don't know. This controversy. That's the word.
Disagreement.
This disagreement that Mick Gordon and Stratton are having. There's so much more behind the scenes that the average person doesn't understand, just through lack of knowledge, type thing. Although I would say that if for our audience watching or listening, if you go and read these two accounts, I still think you'll come up on Mick Gordon's side. But Pete, do you have any questions while I mute myself and cough.
Okay. So I actually wanted to move this slightly more forward and start talking about some of the discrepancies actually in terms of the two stories itself. So, like I said at the top of this, obviously Marty had posted out the statement to Reddit in June of 2020, and now we come to Mick's response as of November of 2022. It's 2.5 years later, and it's very, very interesting to see the discrepancies between the two stories. So I'm going to pass this over to TJ first, and his excellent binder of of information that's been highlighted. What was the biggest thing for you that stood out in Marty's statement that actually was refuted by Mick and made you think, I'm definitely on Mick's side on this one?
I mean, I think the biggest thing that was refuted, I don't know about the biggest thing that was refuted because this wasn't really mentioned in the original statement, but I think the biggest thing that hit me like a ton of bricks was the amount of music that ended up in the final game. So one thing that Mick talks about is that he was contracted for, I think it was 152 minutes of music. It's about an hour and 32 minutes or so. And in, when you're composing for a game, that's extremely important because you're being paid not by the hour you're composing, but by the minute of music you produce.
Right, okay.
And so if you write a 3-minute track, and you have to rewrite that 2, 3, 4 times, you're not being paid hourly for the time that you're spending doing that. You're being paid for that 3-minute stretch of music.
That was what I got the impression from reading through Mick's statement, actually, was that you're paid by the minute of the actual final product rather than the actual work done towards it.
Exactly. And so one of the big things that ended up happening is he sent in a lot of files for final approval that were rejected, but those rejected files were then used in the game.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a huge problem because that means that, like, I mean, he of course ended up writing 2 or 3 times as much music, and of course that's how the project goes sometimes, right? That sometimes there has to be iteration, and in video games, especially with how early he was starting and how, like, eventual iteration by the nature of how they did the project was baked into the nature of the beast. He ended up with like over 2 times as much music at the end, and if they only use the music that's accepted, that's the job, right? But when they use so much more music, that is unpaid work according to your contract, and that's such, to me, that's like such a slap in the face.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, when reading through and you look at it and you see that as per the, I'm going to air quote, contract, because that was the one prevalent thing that stood out for me. It was that there was no contract written up before he actually took on the work. That's quite disgraceful. Never sign something and do work without signing it. Always be paid for what you're doing, of course. But the interesting thing is that I think the terms of the contract when it officially did come through was a 12-track OST that ended up being 59 tracks upon release. Now that obviously tells you that a lot of the old masters, some of the rejected tracks, or some of the stuff that Chad had been working on in the background had made it into that soundtrack when it probably shouldn't have been. And that was the thing I think that stood quite prevalent, was the screenshot of the two. So like when you're looking at like Windows and you see the 2 folders that you have, and it shows the amount of tracks that just has solely Mick Gordon on it. It's like 11 or 12, and that should have been the soundtrack.
Well,
it's crazy.
I was gonna say,
it is.
Daniel, what about your thoughts on on contractual work?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that really scares me, that this could happen at the AAA level. I mean, not having a contract would be something I would expect for an inexperienced indie game developer not to do. But this is a guy who's been in this industry and not having a contract to sign. I mean, I'm talking about not going the way it should have been. And that when it came to this deal about, oh yeah, we're gonna offer this was a CE edition,
Yeah.
collector's edition, right? And then add on top of that, oh, we're going to release a soundtrack by Mick Gordon. And Mick Gordon wasn't even involved. He found out on the E3 announcement. I'm like, what? No one told me about this, you know? And then now suddenly you have a deadline that's like, I don't know how many months away it was now. I forgot in the article, but that was like oh shit, now we have to deliver. And now this is probably where all the crux lies, because I don't like blaming other people for my mistakes.
Right.
But this Stratton guy wanted basically put all the failures onto Mick in case this game or the soundtrack was not delivered on time because of the pre-orders. But this is why I never buy pre-orders, people, because you're always going to get disappointed. So I think unfortunate. I mean, I think now, of course, Mick Gordon knows, I should probably sign the contract before I take on a job like this. But yeah, I mean, this is the brilliant thing about Mick. He has everything time stamped, as you said. He got the receipts. So I mean, just reading that, and like, yeah, Mick, I feel you. We're on the same side. But working 11 months without being paid, you know, that is, I've been working 2.5 months and not being paid. I know what it feels like. So
I think I feel you is all I was going to say. Sorry.
Well,
So sorry, Kiley. Just for clarification, the collector's edition was announced at E3 in June 2019, and then they were supposed to release it, obviously, in November or October. Sorry, November. It was supposed to release in November, so he wasn't given a lot of timescale. And then you read in the article itself that the contract for that OST, even after the delay, didn't come through until January, and that was only because he had to contact ZeniMax to be able and Bethesda to actually be able to do something with it.
Right, and get a contract signed, and then that became the 12-1, right? But
So do you feel like, sorry if I've stepped on your toes here, Kiley, and asking a question, but do you feel that actually that's what sort of put Marty's back up a little bit more than anything, is that actually Mick stopped dealing with Marty because he wasn't getting what he wanted or what he needed, and obviously not getting the answers he wants, by going to ZeniMax and to Bethesda to actually get a contract for the work that he wants? So just to put it in clarification, reading in the Reddit, it sort of feels like Marty wanted to have complete control over this project in every way, shape, or form with everybody. And by getting ZeniMax and Bethesda involved, he had that control taken away from him. And as a narcissistic person would react, they put their back up and they started putting more barriers in place, which then causes more friction to then come to the forefront. But would you say that I'd be completely wrong in that interpretation? Or? Okay, for clarification for the podcast, they both shook their heads.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Sometimes we're an audio medium too. I mean, we can't make an assumption whether they're a narcissist or not, but we will say that it does have behavior that echoes that.
That's what I mean. For my disclosure, that's how it came across to me, as he comes across as quite a narcissistic person.
Well, that's kind of leads into what I was going to ask previously, and I'll start with TJ, but and then we'll go to Daniel, especially with TJ's perspective as indie. Your creative freedom, we'll say that. Do you, purely in your opinion, in your experience, or whatever, do you think as an indie creator you have more creative freedom than, let's say, someone working for a AAA corporation, corporate overlord type thing? Do you have the same pressures? Do you have the same oversight? Or do you have more of a kind of creative, freedom, like I said?
I mean, I think we need to define what creative freedom means in this context, right? I always think I remember there's something that Bear McCreary said once, which was that I don't write my music, I write their music. Now, that's just because you're working for a client. The client has, even if it's a vague idea, they have an idea of how they want their game to sound, and you try to create that. That doesn't mean that, like, you don't make artistic decisions and that you're not collaborating or that, like, you're under a whip or something.
Okay.
But this idea I think there's sometimes an idea that, like, when people say creative freedom in this sort of context, that you can do whatever you want, and it's very much, you're very much listening to the directors, trying to do what they want and give them what they want. That being said, I think in the indie space there's certainly a lot more room for trying things out that are new, trying things out that are, maybe a little bit more experimental in some ways, or trying things out that, like, putting a little bit more of yourself in there because there's a little bit more of this wiggle room, and because, like, your musical track goes through maybe, like, 2 or 3 other people at the company that, you can talk, depending on, like, what sort of studio it is, like, you're talking to and you have a much closer relationship with, versus at a AAA studio, that track can go through, 10, maybe even 20 people, many of which you will have no connection with, or no little to no interaction with at times. And so, at least from what I would imagine in comparison, you have a lot of creative freedom, but you're still very much locked to what does the game designer want? What does everybody that is, that you are making the music for want, if that makes sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. Daniel, what about you've worked in both mediums. Do you feel that one is more, creatively, freedom? I keep saying it, and I'll keep saying that phrase.
I think, yeah. I mean, there, as he said, like, if I work for the big clients, I always look at myself as a carpenter. I'm trying to create the most perfect table for them to make it fit, So, I mean, the first 2 years working in this industry, you always like, oh, why don't they like my music? You kind of hate yourself for not being able to deliver what they want. But after the few years, you start to realize, no, this is not my music. I'm doing it for them. I'm doing it exactly as TJ said. I'm doing it for the product. I want to help, like we say in the movie, that music is a third character that binds everything together. Same thing with games. It could make or break a game. Some people say, okay, the game may not look amazing, but the music gonna keep me playing.
Yes.
That's one aspect of it. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't think about that before. So with AAA clients, it's always been, they're already here in Japan, at least. That's the only thing I can speak about. They are incredibly prepared. They have the reference material, but there's sometimes gonna be a few communication errors when we talk about certain styles of music, like the trance thing that we talked about
before, yeah.
And they were not thinking electronic trance. We're thinking hippie music, psychedelic music, not techno. But from there on, it's always been like two people involved for me. It's been the music supervisor at the company, and then sometimes with the Resident Evil, I was only talking to the lead composer, Narita-san. So Narita-san was basically the lead. He was dividing up the work, and he wrote some of the stuff himself. But that's as far as my communication went with them. But with Street Fighter, it was a little bit different. I was only talking to my agent, and they were talking to the music director there. But during, like, I think it was like the last few months of a season or something, they asked me if we could speed up the working process. I got a direct link with the music supervisor. And that doesn't really happen here because they want to go through a chain of command all the way, right? But it actually worked, and we managed to deliver much of the music a lot faster. But in Mick Gordon's case, I don't know if when he was delivering his demo, it was already stemmed it out, like all the instruments separate. I think they only got a stereo track because that's how we would like to demo our stuff. Like, hey, here's a small little clip from us. And if they rejected it, then I said, okay, I'm still working on that song I'm still getting paid for. But for them to keep it and then use it in game without being able to edit or mix it, that's when we start to see problem with quality in the sound. And of course, Mick Gordon was not happy because he said these are just ideas; these are not finished products.
Right.
And to have that, it's a slap in the face, like, because then you don't get to show our best sides too. So we want to deliver the best we can for the client and something we can also be happy with. And that's why now when I write a song, I don't have like one version of the song. Right now I have 20 versions of the same song.
Right.
Because depending on when I come back the day after, I say, I'll save that old song, but let's just keep working on another direction. So new file name, new date. And I go to like where I can take it. But if something goofs up, I just go back to the previous day and take it in a different direction. So that's the thing. Our work process is only limited by the hard drive's sizes now. But that's how I work. But indie game, I would say most of the indie game developers, I've searched for them. They have not looked for me until recently.
Okay.
I started to get a little bit of buzz. But when I see a game and I talk to the developer, it's like, hey, your game looks really interesting. Do you mind if I can write music for it? And they say, we don't have any budget for the music right now. I said, don't worry, I can help you pitch it. And once you get like not a third party, but an investor or a publisher, then they can finally funnel money into the project. And that's how I done it. That's it. If I see something really interesting, I say, hey, I really like what I see here. Can I help write the music for the game? Even though you don't have any money, but
I like that. That's
and
really cool.
That's how I do it these days. Yeah.
I actually see a lot of parallels listening to both of you. I've always worked in art and production for various corporations and stuff. And actually, weirdly, the iterations and everything that you're talking about, and then being under, what the client wants, their framework and everything, it's very similar. And being able to relate that to that, I'm kind of getting a bigger picture here. So would you say, and TJ, I guess I'll start with you, and then we'll throw it back to Daniel and pitch it back and forth. This particular instance where Stratton springs this stuff on Mick Gordon, is that a typical experience that you've ever kind of found yourself in?
I mean, it depends. Sometimes, I guess the answer is sometimes, it's never been as bad. And also, like, I have a personal relationship with most of the people that I work with. And so it's never like this sort of like, almost like a faceless corporation sort of feel. Right. But sometimes something doesn't work or something changes and you're working on something else and this other thing needs to be changed too, and everyone's on a schedule, and so that's just sort of how things work out, is that you get something big sprung on you and you just sort of have to move things around and figure out how you can make the whole thing work. As far as like the soundtrack in particular goes, this is sort of going backwards a little bit in some ways, but it almost feels like, to me, there was this feeling from Marty that, we're going to say that this is the soundtrack from Mick and not touch him and not do anything with him at all, and completely keep him out of the situation until, of course, Mick, forced himself into a situation because, he didn't want something with his name on it not being from him, which is completely understandable.
Absolutely.
But to me, the whole situation just feels like it feels weird and controlling and manipulative and just not. The simple answer is just no. It does not seem normal. It seems completely a mess.
Yeah, I get that impression from mostly from Mick's response, but also just my experience in corporate America. And it seems very strange. Daniel, what about your experience? Is this, big surprise at an E3 announcement and, type of thing? Is that a normal thing that you've ever experienced?
No. I mean, as a hobby psychologist, being like, not only writing music, I also do like music psychology, and then I study normal psychology,
Absolutely,
But how this Martin Stratton guy is behaving, that's a pure case of narcissism and superiority complex. He's never wrong. He's always right. It's like, I have not experienced that per se, or nothing that's like resulting in a personal attack on me. So for me, it's always been like, maybe the closest thing I ever got to was maybe I've been writing music for a client, and they already made the game, and then they have an idea what the music is supposed to be doing, but then they cannot define it. And they say, here's a reference track. I listen to the reference track and I write the music similar to the reference track. And then they say, this is not what we want.
Right.
Like, what? Those are the moments that are most frustrating to me. So if that's the case, but it's always been related to music, so no personal attack whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So but that's how I felt like, oh man, what are these people? Why are they in charge?
Yes.
And
that's what I want to know.
Looking at Martin Stratton, how he ended up in the position he is, having that much power, but lacks one significant skill, and that's communication.
Yes.
If you're going to run a team, you need to talk to everybody, including the guys outside.
Yes.
And for me, it's always been like, okay, here's a steady schedule. Let's say every 2 weeks, let's sit and have a Skype meeting. Mm-hmm. And then that's what we did for Resident Evil, at least. Like we got an update. Oh, here's a new video. Here's a new direction they want to take it. Like, that's great. Communicate. Mm-hmm. That's all I want, to be included into the process. But totally exclude Mick Gordon, and then that announcement at E3, as a composer myself, like, damn, what they're setting me up for failure. Now this is, they're looking for a scapegoat, and he's not going to take it because of his clumsy planning. This Stratton guy,
And if I may jump off that, like, that goes all the way back to the scheduling issues, all the way at the beginning of the project, how they started, because you always have an ideal schedule at the beginning. You think you know how things are going to go, and then a million things happen, right? But the important thing is being flexible and being able to move things around and figure out how everything's going to work. And it seemed like, it was very clear from day one, to Mick at least, that, hey, this schedule we set out is not practical. It's not going to work. And when he brought that up, it was absolutely shot down. And it's almost like, you see the writing on the wall, you don't change anything. And then all the things that were predicted, you see happening in the rest of the, 60 pages.
Oh, gosh,
and it's heartbreaking to see that sort of like, look, I put this in Excel. We can't change it. It's like published sort of mentality that, happens sometimes.
Yes.
But I forget where I was going somewhere with this, and my brain went in the other direction.
That's
but
quite
absolutely right. The schedule was written in stone,
yeah.
And there's no amount of tip-picks to change that. It's like, that was the stupidest thing I've ever read.
Yeah,
like, it's in Excel, but it's a domino effect when it doesn't line up. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, then a hypothetical situation on this one is, what happened when they delayed the game? What happens to that all-encompassing schedule when they decided to delay?
Yeah. They did delay it. Yeah.
More and more games nowadays are getting delayed, and of course, it's not the fault of the people that are working at the bottom, and in a lot of ways, it's not the fault of the people at the top either. Because if you've built, several games, you probably do have some idea of like how long it's going to take and what is going to happen. But games just keep getting more and more complex to build and to create as the technology, we can do more things. Doing more things is hard. And you know, it means delays. It means that your best intentions aren't going to always see their way through. And I don't know. I like, and it even happens with them too, but I always appreciate, even though it can be excruciating sometimes to be sitting here being like, when is the next Zelda game coming out? They haven't said anything in years. Like, at least, like, there's a feeling that, hey, they're not putting a fine point on it, and they're giving their developers a little bit of time to breathe because of that.
Which,
even if there's like an internal date, which I don't know the internal workings of Nintendo, but
are you sure? Do you know something we don't?
Let me pull out my crystal ball and contact Miyamoto.
I mean, just from an outsider's perspective, it seems to be that Nintendo don't tend to usually announce release dates until they're 100% certain that the game is going to come out on that day. There's been a few exceptions, though.
I think that's good. Personally, we've actually talked about that. That was a theme on one of our shows, about how games are now being delayed more and more. But we're a very dev-friendly podcast, so we say give the devs all the time they need. To make something
everyone something I hate. I like the corporate crunch time.
Yes.
And for me to see Mick Gordon experience that, it was ridiculous how much he put himself under just for 12 songs. I mean, that's what I imagined. Like, well, 2 months, 2 songs per month, that's no problem. And then suddenly there are 59 tracks in the thing. Yeah. Like, hey, that's unpaid work.
Yeah.
And he should be compensated for that, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the contract itself for the OST wasn't signed until the 18th of March, so 2 days before the game was actually released.
Yeah. I also find it interesting. Again, I don't know how normal this is, but Stratton trying to get Mick Gordon to sign a gag order, or NDA, or something like that, which to me, as an outside observer, says that Stratton knew he was wrong. He was wrong, and didn't want Mick Gordon going to the press, which I do respect Mick for sitting on this, waiting till he had all of his facts, all of his data. And I personally think, now I would like to get you guys' opinion on this, I think he's had a lawyer help him draft this, so he's kind of covering all this.
I'll weigh in very, very briefly on this one first. There is no way in heck that he has released this statement without legal counsel first.
I really get the impression. It feels like all of his, that all of his T's are crossed and his I's are dotted, or however that phrase goes.
Dotted the I's and crossed the T's.
Yeah, all that. Because it's very thorough. It's very well researched. It has all of the, we say, receipts, and everything like that.
Also, just as a note of point, it's the table of contents that makes it feel like it is a legal document as well.
To be fair, that is what made me go, I think he's run this by a lawyer. But what do you guys think? We'll start with TJ, and then we'll move to Daniel. Where do you think they go from here? What the future holds?
Well, I mean, right now things are being tried in the court of public opinion, right? And so I think the next thing to watch for is whatever reaction we do get from Bethesda and id, and potentially even Microsoft, now that, it's the big old umbrella. But I think, like, as far as, like, the nitty-gritty, I think the best thing that could happen is that at the very least there is a public showing of, like, and this is best case scenario. Do I think that this will happen? Honestly, probably not, but I'm a little cynical. But best case scenario, he's at least paid for the work that he did. And there is some sort of public recognition. I don't think, and again, I am very cynical, but I've been watching, how everything's been going in the video game industry for the last couple of years. I don't think anyone's getting fired. I don't think, like...
Oh, no. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Responsibility.
Yeah, no. But, hopefully, at the very least, he's paid for his work. But more likely, there will be some sort of very corporately clean statement in the next couple of days that we're going to see. And that might be it. As far as on his end, I mean, it is very clear. I mean, one thing that I noticed very solidly is that if you look at all of his screenshots, there are no, I think there might be one. No, that was a contract even. So there are no screenshots of other people's emails, only his emails. And even those are very carefully, like, blocked out in sort of cases. And so, honestly, it's possible that there might be a legal challenge on his end in order to get this taken down. Or, because I think like his point of doing this is to sort of like, hit the beehive with a baseball bat in a way and get things moving. And so, we'll have to sort of hang tight and see what happens from that perspective. But yeah, best case scenario, he gets paid. Worst case, well, it's not like his reputation's going down. His reputation seems to only be going up at the moment because of the article. And
Thank
so,
goodness.
yeah, it's been really redemptive for him. And so, I don't know. I think we're going to see a lot more of Mick Gordon's music in big games in the future. It's just going to be, all these things are a couple of years out because games take forever to make.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. And to be fair, it's actually starting to make a bit more sense why he was recently associated with that more indie-focused project that they announced, I think, at an Xbox showcase.
Well, see, that's okay. Now, this is my personal opinion, and then I want to hear from Daniel, of course. I am hoping, I put a lot of faith, I probably shouldn't, but I put a lot of faith in Phil Spencer. So I'm hoping that he'll catch wind of this and just do something to make it right. I know, like, the whole Activision thing isn't going so great, responsibility and accountability, but maybe this one will. But that's me being very optimistic. But Daniel, what do you think? Where do they go from here? What do you think?
Oh, well, of course, just like TJ here, I hope the Mick gets everything is rightfully needs for the twice amount of music that has been made for the game without the consent of Mick, which is unfortunate. But yeah, he must be compensated. That's what I see first of all, if this doesn't come through. But of course, I don't like to, like, no one should even think about scapegoating anyone because we know where the problem really lies, and that's a planning stage and written down in stone. But yeah, for me, TJ as well, we're very flexible when it comes to clients' requests, and I think if we have good working like principles, we're gonna get work. And Mick is no exception. I'm sure he's gonna get lots of more work. And through all this, I mean, my kerfuffle that happened a few months ago. Like, I suddenly got contacted by the Teenage Mutant Ninja versus what was it called? Justice League.
Yeah.
I knew, like, how did that happen? I did not expect that. So even through bad publicity, there's actually something good that might happen through all that, right? But of course, it's most important to know the two sides of the story. And for me, it just comes down to one individual, or actually two. Sure, Stratton put him under working on this so-called official soundtrack for 6 months before Mick got involved with Chad, and to see how they cannibalized mixed tracks and how badly edited they were. And I even checked out the tracks that were in, like, listen to track 24. Like, yeah, that's an awful editing things are happening. So obviously this editor knows nothing about music or how to count to 4 or whatever to make anything sound, and it's not presented in a way that's musical, if that makes any sense to say that way. So I mean, if it was me, I would say, just like Mick, like, Doom is a great looking game. Doom Eternal is awesome. So I did not exit the game. I just exited a toxic client.
I love that line. I love that line. The line is, I never quit Doom. I quit a toxic client. I love that.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, it's the same thing. There are games that I really love writing music for, but maybe I did not have the best client. But the end result is for me the goal. But yeah, for Mick, I wish him all the best for the future because he has a great working ethic. I love the way he designs new sounds for the music. But these other two guys, I wouldn't even recognize them from a can of paint if I saw them in real life. So for me, those two guys have lost every amount of respect, especially when it comes to, putting your name as a co-composer, but you didn't write a single note in the thing.
Yeah.
That is so disrespectful. As Mick said, he should have another title like a music editor or some kind of like audio technical term rather than a co-producer or co-composer. So let's see what happens. But if I see Stratton's name in my email, hard pass.
Yes.
That's all I can say.
Oh gosh, yes.
Not about contract first.
Exactly, and contract first.
Pete, do you want to add anything? Because I have a question that is outside of this theme, but I really want to hear from them. But you go first.
I have one slightly loaded question, let's be honest here. So there's one part of the statement for me from Mick itself that felt more like conjecture than actual factual statements, because most of this felt very factual, matter of fact. These are the events. This is what happened. Now, the conjecture was more about whether or not the Fallout 76 Collector's Edition caused a bit of a problem when it came to the Collector's Edition for Doom Eternal and this weird timescale that they were working on. Now, do you really believe those claims, or do you... I mean, we all know how bad the Fallout 76 Collector's Edition really was. Now, do you really feel like Marty should have been taking this stance of taking everything himself and doing it all for the sake of Bethesda and not, trying to save face on the fact on that one? Or do you feel like this part should have been omitted from the statement because it's not legally factual, let's say?
I don't remember that.
I think I might be misremembering, and it's a really long statement.
I mean, admittedly, I might be misremembering as well.
Let's see. The following name of the release date was 5 months away. Delaying the game was the right call. At the time, it was not polished nor optimized, and Bethesda didn't want a repeat of Fallout 76. Is that the line that you're talking about?
Oh, it might have been. I read that as the collector's edition, not Fallout 76 as a whole project itself.
Right. Because that was also a really messy release. Not as messy as Cyberpunk, but
oh gosh,
but still very messy.
Yes, it was very. In fact, let me read the full paragraph, and then that'll give you your thoughts on it. Suddenly, just six weeks away from the release date, which is insane, Doom Eternal got delayed into the following year. The new release date, March 20th, 2020, was 5 months away. Delaying the game was the right call. At the time, it was not polished nor optimized, and Bethesda didn't want a repeat of Fallout 76. So it's talking about the delay, and not wanting it to mirror the awfulness that was Fallout 76. Also, I saw the collector's edition. The things that I saw the influencer edition that they gave to the Instagram people. Oh gosh, it was awful. It was not ready.
Okay.
It was not ready.
So yeah, the facts of the details might have been slightly different, but yeah, it does still, for me, it did still sort of feel like it was more conjecture than more actual based in factual evidence there. And it was the only disappointing part for me in terms of the statement itself, just to be fair and balanced, of course. But I do feel like the vast majority of what Mick said was all backed by evidence, and it was a very clean, a very decently written statement that should have just refuted nearly everything that was posted down, and it was clearly meant as you slandered me on Reddit, so therefore I need to clear my name, even though I shouldn't have to. My work should be able to do justice for that alone.
Yeah. And actually, that there is a linked article to that statement, which is we finally know why Doom Eternal was delayed. and it has the line, recently Bethesda's Pete Hines, who we've talked about frequently on this show, offered some more insight into the delay, saying it was inspired by the negative response to Fallout 76.
Okay, so yeah, fine, not conjecture then.
Not quite conjecture, but I do feel like, now again, outside observer, that maybe they were using Fallout 76's negative reception as an excuse to delay the game, type thing. I have to agree. I think it was the right call. I mean, I did the review of Doom Eternal. I loved playing the game. I absolutely loved it. I don't think I would have loved it 5 months earlier, if I'm being honest. You know, it would have been buggy. Which, okay, I'm a Bethesda fangirl, and I know that bugs come with Bethesda. And,
But it's not synonymous with id, though, is it?
Not really. It's usually very, very high quality. Or, you know, back in the past, they're known for their higher quality things. That's why all of this is actually quite a surprise, because it's a long-standing corporation, publisher, developer. It's gone through so many different iterations, you know, and it's kind of reflecting what Daniel said. This should have been it should have been a slam dunk. It should have been, they've been in the game for so long. How did they drop the ball so badly? You know, is the whole crux of this, you know, and I think it does come down to one person's need for control. But I'm going to let you guys say anything more you want to say, and then I'm going to ask you a really weird question. But it's about your industry, so it's not that weird.
Shall we make that the last question then after that?
Well,
I think we've got some final chat bits to do.
We've got some chat questions
yeah,
too.
I was just going to say that your last weird question will be the final question.
But TJ, do you have any last words you want to say towards this fiasco? Uh-oh, you're muted.
Oh.
There you go. Uh-oh.
No, well, sound's gone.
Sound's gone.
Okay, maybe I can fill in while he's trying to figure that one out.
Yeah,
thank you.
Okay, all right. So yeah, as you said, like I wish everything good for Mick. I mean, as I said, his working, like his quality of work is so good, and of course, since he's been working with Xbox earlier together with Killer Instinct, you know, I think he has a really good relation with those people. So I like that he's taken the indie game route too. I mean, and that's the thing. A lot of game companies these days in Japan, like Square Enix or Konami, they don't really have any sections devoted for music, only sound integration right now or sound design. So a lot of composers have been working at these companies, decided let's go freelance. It's the only way to be able to do music now these days. Because what's the point of having a music division inside a company and they're still hiring outside workforce just to write the music? You know, what's the point, really? And yeah, I mean, I do find the indie games seem to be a lot more artistic. They're new visions, and I'm glad that Mick is also exploring more incredible worlds that he can do with sound as well. So in my book, Mick, if you come to Japan, let's hang out and have a good time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Can we hear TJ? Oh no, we still can't hear you.
No.
Why? What happened? Well.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll say my final thoughts on this piece as well. In that respect, yeah, this was quite a ride actually. Like reading this was. Putting everything together for this episode was a really interesting one. And obviously, I have to thank Daniel and TJ for giving us a lot of the insight in terms of the background of this. It's quite incredible, really, like how everything seems to have fallen apart. But yeah, I'm definitely mirroring the sentiments of Daniel here. You know, I really hope that Mick still gets a lot of work within this. You know, his like you said with 2013's Killer Instinct, that was the first time I'd had some real exposure to Mick as a game composer, and I wasn't particularly that fond of the game, but the music always stood out to me, and you know, so and then you just hear the soundtracks for Doom, and then a few other projects that he's done since then, and he has a very unique sound, like, and I think it's that unique sound that I want to hear more of in the future. So I really, really hope so. It's just
I think we're starting to hear TJ.
we are starting to. I think.
That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yay!
Can you hear me
Yes,
again?
you're back.
So yeah, you're back. So
I had to hard restart my mic.
Oh, well.
wow,
Sheesh,
okay.
I know how that goes.
Yeah, just to finish the
I'm not
point I was
using
making there. So it's just, I really hope he gets more work. I want him to see more of his work, whether it be in indie development, AAA development. I really hope that this situation hasn't put him off of AAA music composition and production, because obviously this could have a pretty damning effect on someone, like in terms of their job history. And I really hope that as a result of what appears to be some very flagrant lies, let's say, to put it lightly, from Marty Stratton's side, let's hope he hasn't been blacklisted as a result of it.
Well, I think he's actually getting better exposure. That's the word. Because of this. But that's personal opinion. As an outsider, I have no idea.
Of course.
Type thing. But TJ, do you want to say any final thoughts on this experience?
I mean, I think my general takeaway from the whole thing is it's another part of this trend that we've been seeing for the past couple of years of there's a lot of just people in the video game industry that are mistreating other people. And it's always terrible to see because our industry brings so many people so much joy. And yet sometimes it feels like, the people that are creating that joy don't always have that for themselves. And so like one of the things that my company is trying to do is to try to like spread awareness about that. I mean, I'm obviously a straight white man, but my lead developer is a person of color and a woman, and our lead artist is a woman. And like when we go to events, they're some of the only women there most of the time. And so we're trying to spread awareness to try to get, more varied voices in. And so hopefully over time, these people at the top don't end up being these people that abuse things as much. And hopefully, we get more diversity and we're able to push some of these people that have been causing a lot of these troubles recently out of the way. Slowly but surely.
Less Bobby Kotick's.
Yes.
Oh, agreed.
Yeah.
Definitely need a lot less of him.
Yeah, a less toxic working environments. That's what they all should strive for.
Yes, I mean, creativity thrives in non-toxic environments, okay, so Pete, do you want to ask the questions from chat as it still pertains to this?
Okay, yeah. So there's a couple of comments, and I think there's one question in there that I need answering. So Nana put, it seems like Bethesda began cutting costs and lack communication, which I am shocked at how many companies just fail at give people time and pay them properly. I 100% agree with that statement.
100% agree.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He also weighed in and said, I know Dragon Quest XI had a small controversy over how bad the music sounded in the game. Apparently because the composer didn't want to give over the masters, I think, he said.
It's interesting. Might have to read up on that one.
The soundtrack between Dragon Quest XI and Dragon Quest XI S were like two different games, I think.
Oh, wow. That's wild.
So we had, I'm just going to pronounce this incorrectly, I apologize, E.I.K. Deer, I think it is, or L.E.K. Deer. How much say do you get in the final version? If you deliver something they really like in the pre-production, but they continue developing the character in a way that makes you want to rework your main themes, do you have that freedom?
That's a very good question.
Great question.
Let's start with TJ and then go to Daniel.
It really depends on the project. Sometimes, like, especially when you're working a lot in tandem, you'll write something like a theme, for example, towards the beginning of the project that eventually will just need to be reworked as the character goes in a different direction, and you and the developer will sort of have this moment where you're like, this doesn't quite fit anymore. And in those cases, like, absolutely. But also, at the end of the day, what the developer wants and what their vision is the king. And so while there is a certain amount of like your ability to change things, Once something is locked, if the developer likes it, that's what it's sort of going to be. And that's just how it is a lot of the time on these projects. Now, sometimes you might be able to be like, hey, I really think that it might be better if this, but when you're facing deadlines and everything else, you know, you don't always have time to go back and fix that, especially if it's a very, very core rudimentary element that then will bleed into every single track of the game. It can be really, really difficult. But yeah, it depends on the project at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Ben,
Yeah.
your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, depending on like a AAA client, they already like, in my case, I always listen to the music supervisor, and we just says, this is okay. I don't need to worry about it. So there's no need for me to go back. But now working with the indie game Fallen City Brawl, like a classic belt runner beat 'em up game, and since I'm in charge of the music there, we had a set for maybe at the end of November, but now I don't know. I think the game has been postponed. I think the developer, it's only one guy. Remember, this is only one guy doing the game. Do it. I think he's pushing the deadline a little bit further. That gives me more chance to go back to my old work and clean up and maybe change some stuff here and there. Even thought I'm already getting paid like first sum in the beginning of the project and then the rest. I mean, we make all kinds of different deals for this one, but for me, I want to deliver the best music that I can, and if I have like opportunity to go back and change stuff, I'm not going to charge extra. It's because this is on me. I want to help deliver a good project for this game. Yeah, exactly. So for me, I would say right now on the indie game side of I can do whatever I want, but in the AAA, not so much.
Yes, that's how it always is.
Totally fair.
Okay, so my think piece for today, for these two. So that you've definitely heard of the kind of new controversy, I guess, in the art world, which is AI generated art. And as you know, they've started doing AI generated voice actors, which is insane.
But did I hear that rightly? It was James Earl Jones that they're doing that with Vader going forward.
Yeah, because he's dropped out. He's done. He's not
Yeah.
more Vader. But now they're actually cultivating completely new voices through AI. I guess we'll start. I want to hear from both of you, 100%. Daniel, what do you think? Do you see AI music and sound design as a possible threat in the future?
Okay, now what is an AI? It's something that we have to teach, right?
Yes.
And I mean, we can teach the AI to count to 4, but for it to make creative decisions, I mean, there was a weird thing. Just a few weeks ago, I got approached by an AI music company on Twitter. I said, "Hey, check out this product."
Oh my gosh.
And they had like put up music depending on moods. So they said, "Okay, rainy city, blah blah blah." And I was listening to this, like, no, it doesn't threaten me at all because it lacks one thing. It's a human feeling, the human factor. But if people think, hey, we can just discredit it, we don't need composers for our game anymore. But in the end, it's going to be the music will not, if it's not managed, it will not sound good. So I think there's still a place for a composer to clean up some of these things. But I think it's, yeah, I don't think AI in music will be anything that worries me that much. If people think that's a cheap way to get away from it, then the product's going to suffer as a result in the end. Yeah.
Yep.
How about you, TJ?
Yeah, I want to know what you think.
Yeah. I mean, I pretty much feel the same way. I mean, The thing about AI music is that there are some radio stations you can find online that play like only hardcore metal that has been produced by an AI. And the thing is that it's pretty believable. Like you can sit down and you can listen to it and it's like this, yeah, no, like this does sound like actual music. But I think to me the kicker is that like one of the things I know I've said everything that I've said about like, you know, creative control and all that sort of stuff, but like one of the things about the process that allows, you know, everything to flourish is collaboration, and it's the ability to like be able to bounce different ideas off of people and really like, you know, rub that collective brain cell versus just, you know, sort of being in an echo chamber with yourself. And so one of my big concerns with like AI generated music is that if you only have like the programmer who may have musical knowledge, may not have musical knowledge, sitting and trying to choose which tracks are going to be right for the game, it's going to be very, very hit or miss, where like some things may work but might not work that well. Other things might work great, but then other things are just not going to work at all. And so, you know, echoing what Daniel said, the product is going to suffer. And at the end of the day, I don't even think that that's necessarily AI's fault. Like it's not the AI, it's the people that control the AI and the people that direct the AI, right? Because it's always like, it's that whole chain of command, and like it could be an interesting tool, but I don't think, even as a tool, I don't really see it being used in that way, in a way that is ever going to be as effective. But who knows? The future is a lot weirder than we always expect, and maybe we'll see in 50 years, you know, a game completely made with an AI composer, but that's different issues and different.
I mean, have you seen some of the AI generated memes that go around? They're hilarious.
Here's what I've noticed, because, you know, obviously I've got a foot in the art world, and I see Nan is in the chat kind of talking about it too.
I'm going to bring those up in a minute.
Is where, as far as art is concerned, if the person putting the commands into the AI thing is an artist themselves, then they use it as a base and then they clean it up, rework it, and it becomes something. If they're not an artist, the creation comes out with like 7 fingers. They don't know how to fix it. So yeah, I kind of see it doing that with music as well.
Yeah, I mean, there was something you just said there that I just realized. Oh man, now I forgot what it was. But yeah, like, yes. Okay, here's the thing. So I mean, a visual-based AI is drawing from pictures and learning how to do that process all the time. But teaching AI sound, especially music, I think voices, it has done really well to replicate. And now we have these kind of audio markers that we can talk normally, and suddenly Ian McKellen comes out and says, "Hey," like, right. And I've seen like the guys at the, what is it called, the one of the best YouTube sites, Corridor Crew, have been using this kind of voice altercation software. But music, I think, is a completely different beast, because sure, you can, as I said, you can learn a thing to count to 4. As he said, it can learn a music style and all that stuff. But the creation of originality, it still has to draw from pre-existing materials. So the question is, how original will it be at the end? And that's where we come in. At least that's where I see it. If it's a tool,
yeah,
sure.
And oh, sorry.
No, you go. You go right ahead.
I was just gonna say that like one thing that's interesting about originality too is that like how much of what we do is original, right? We're all using like, we know what sad music sounds like, for example, right? And we can take the different themes and the different ideas and the style and combine that into something that sounds right for that cinematic moment, right? But we have this understanding behind like why if I use this, and I'm using pattern very loosely here, but if I use like a musical pattern or an idea in this way, it's going to get this response. We know why that is, and we know how to tweak that to make it more so, to make that less. Like, we know there's a lot of nuance there that an AI just sees the pattern, right? And it doesn't really know everything that goes on behind it. Sort of like how in art, like an AI might be able to identify like, oh, this is this is this drawing technique or this painting technique, but it won't necessarily understand why it's being used and how that heightens the expression and how to really use that to like make something super emotional. It just sees, oh, it's a pattern.
Right. That's actually a very, very good point.
I was going to say that's quite interesting because actually Eli's actually come in and stated that. It says, I feel like an AI has the potential to generate dozens to hundreds of ideas that could be given to a composer to properly flesh out.
Yeah, I guess seeing it as a tool, as opposed to the final product, possibly. But I mean, but then you got to think like, okay, talking about themes and different styles and things like that. Like Bear McCreary has his own style. Jeremy Soles has his style. And then you've got all the different composing styles. Those styles sounds maybe cheesy, but those styles come from lived experience. They come from emotions. And I don't think AI can recreate that. Even, oh God, I hit my mic again. Can recreate that even in, in not just music, but even in art. I think it lacks that human element, And again, that's maybe just my cheesy creative side, but I really see that a lot in AI generated anything. It feels empty, and things like that. Because they don't know the markers. Oh, minor chords makes humans feel this, type thing. Yeah. So, Pete, do you want to add anything else before we wrap up the show?
Well, to finish up with this final comment from Nana, he said, like with everything else this year, there will be a boom and then it will go away fast.
Yeah, I definitely, I think so.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah. NFTs, let's just say it. NFTs are gone now.
Yeah.
Did you guys see, I'm sure you did, that they tried to do that with sound as well, sound clips?
Yes.
Yes.
I know many people that had sound stolen and put onto sound NFT sites, and they had to go and put a DMCA on the sites in order to get it taken down. And I know many artists that were in the same situation with visual art too. I mean, it's this is an entire other wormhole that I could go in for so long, but NFTs.
Well, we now know the next topic we're getting you on for.
Yeah, I can talk all about musical NFTs.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, that's a crazy thing. The place I'm working right now, their entire thing is trying to get into the NFT market and metaverse.
Yeah.
And I wait, you don't really have like, what are we supposed to be doing now again? Are we really writing music for NFTs?
Exactly.
I don't get the business model. Like, give me an artist and let me produce the artist. That's all I care about, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
NFTs, I couldn't care less.
Yeah. I think the only people who care about NFTs are the people who don't understand NFTs. Like, cause you see a lot of game companies. I think it's Capcom is the latest one to jump on. I believe it's Capcom. Pete, you have to correct me if I'm wrong. But they're selling NFTs of their games.
Yeah.
Why? Why?
Okay, well, if that's come out in the last couple of days, I haven't seen that.
Oh yeah, you should look into it, Pete. Maybe go buy
I will. Never.
Oh no.
I will not be taking that board Ryu at any time.
Oh gosh.
If anything, I think NFTs are just going to be like, the like those 1980s exercise leggings of the 2020s of like, people are gonna look back and they're gonna be like, NFTs, what are you, 1,000? Oh, might as well be a dinosaur remembering about NFTs.
That's so 2020s.
Brilliant.
Oh gosh.
I can sell my fingerprint for a few $1 million and you'll have access to my bank account. Yeah.
Oh my
What do you say?
gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh, you're gonna give somebody an idea out there.
And let's
I'm
not
so
keep
sorry.
going down this rabbit hole, shall we?
Yeah.
I copyright the C minor mode. Okay, that's my NFT. There you go.
Oh no, I gotta go get D minor.
See, but that's it. That is how they egg each other on. And that was funny though. I will say this, and then I really will wrap it up. But like the guy that bought a screenshot, because that's what it is, of Jack Dorsey's tweet, and he bought it for like, I don't know, 25 million. I'm just throwing that out there. It could be 2 million. I don't know. And he ended up having to sell it for like $10.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
You dummy.
Yep. Anyway, let me just get the last comment before we wrap off. It said Eli came in and said, what I think is scary about the AI is that the ones we've seen are only the first generation.
Yeah, that's like when deepfakes came out, and that first time they came out, I was like, you can still tell it's kind of fake. And then now it's like, is this a deepfake or is this real? I don't know.
Yeah, the lines have been blurred between deepfake and actual nude leaking.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
That's not.
That is the future. But yes, I want to thank our guest so much for joining us. This has been a wonderful episode, very deep dive into the kind of behind the scenes. And I hope that our listeners and our watchers got to see just how important. I mean, we know music's important. We know it's important. But I don't think we realize just how important and how much goes into it. I definitely didn't know myself. But I want to thank TJ. I'm going to call his wrong last name, so I'm going to look at my notes. TJ Martin. It's only because we had a joke in the beginning, and my poor brain remembers joke names, not real names.
Okay.
No, it's fine. I mean, my handle is TJ Mills, and it's confusing.
Okay, good. Glad to know it's not just me. But anyway, TJ Martin has joined us again. He's a composer and sound designer for Boba Studios. TJ, where can they find you and Boba Studios out there in the interwebs?
Well, for me, I am at the moment on Twitter. We'll see how long that lasts. Probably as long as the
show?
frame. Yeah, we'll see. But you can find me at TJ Mills 45 on Twitter. You can find Boba Studios at Boba Studios on Twitter. You can also find them at bobastudios.com, where you can download a demo of our game Squirrely Roo Rabbit. It's a 2.5D puzzle adventure game with a mechanic featuring color theory and also some really delightful things. I'll be right back. But if Daniel, if you want to,
yes,
I'll be right back.
Daniel, you let us know.
All right.
Where we
that
can
sounds like a
find you.
commercial break. Yes. All right. Well, here he is again. Welcome back, sir.
Yeah, I have. This is our character, the little
Amazing.
plush.
That's so cute. Oh my gosh.
She's so good.
Oh my gosh.
Mix
Okay.
between Pikachu and some other copyright infringement there. I don't
Oh, that was adorable for our
that
our
was cute.
audio
Yeah.
listeners. You have to come check it out.
Yeah.
Also, it's really cool. It sounds like it's up my alley because it's about color theory. I'm a graphic designer, so I'm like, but
Maybe you should download the demo and check it out.
I need to.
Yeah, and we have a new one coming out in just a couple months.
Oh, excellent.
Nice.
Very good.
Nice. Awesome.
Daniel, what about you? Where can they find you and all of your lovely, lovely works?
As usual, you can find me on Twitter. That's the easiest way. At DropkickMonk3Y, Dropkick Monkey. I have a YouTube channel, but I just posted, I don't really know if it's worth it anymore, because even if I write my own music and post on YouTube, I somehow get copyright claim for my own stuff. So what's the point? That's really crazy. So I cannot really recommend it. So just find me on Twitter. I would have a company website if my company would have a website. So that's out of the order as well. So just go with the Twitter, DropkickMonk3Y.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that's
And
brilliant.
just so you know, everything will be linked in the show notes, including the links to the Reddit post, the rebuttal by Mick, and obviously the links for Daniel and TJ and Boba Studios.
Excellent. Pete, where can they find you and all your mini podcasts?
You can find me on Twitter, so long as it's still around, at Pete Beckett1, which is spelled BCKETT and the number 1. No, I'm not making the jump to Mastodon yet.
I know.
We'll see.
I know.
Yeah, well, we'll wait until now. But you can also follow me on the Never Watchers podcast, where we talk Marvel Cinematic Universe. We should be recording one this week, where we're covering Spider-Man No Way Home.
Woo! Excellent.
Kylie, what about yourself?
I am going down with the ship, so I too am over on Twitter on the deck of the Titanic, and it's at Kiley to Greet, KLEYTHGREET. But as a backup, I'm also on Instagram at Kiley Yelik, which is KILEYELIK. But to be fair, that's less video games, more gym. So, because it's Instagram, what else you gonna post? Gym and food.
True.
That's it. But I think that is going to do it for us. Thank you so much to our listeners and our watchers for joining us this week. You have been wonderful in chat. We hope to see you next. Oh, well, that actually was my tagline. I walked on my own tagline, Pete. So tired. I'm kidding. But we will see you and talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.
That ends the audio portion. We're going to do another 2 minutes here on Twitch to wrap up with our lovely chat. If they want to say anything. Although
are you able to keep an eye on the chat, or do you want me to do so?
Well, I mean, if you've got it open, yeah.
I have got it open, yeah,
okay.
So that's fine.
Yeah, but that gives us a couple of minutes. That was very, very good. I am not kidding when I say, I know, composing music it's an art, and it's difficult and all that kind of stuff. I know that. I didn't realize just how much went into it. It's really, it is, as Daniel said, it is a third character of the game, or an additional character in the game. And I didn't realize that it's really multi-layered, multifaceted type thing.
Yeah, and to be fair, as someone who loves listening to music and all of that, it was actually really nice to sort of hear the back end side of how it's all sort of created, how it's how it's all put together, and how you work with clients in terms of the those deals that you have to do as working as a freelancer, because it's really insightful actually, as part of the medium that I love but don't know a lot about.
Exactly that.
The logistics of how it all comes together. I mean, always have an agent represent you. I mean, that's the thing. I don't really talk to the game companies directly because they expect my Japanese, or I'll be misunderstanding them. So so it's I need to have a person representing me if I'm going to be talking to these people, even though I can't speak Japanese. But there's a little slight of xenophobia and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they just want to be sure there's no misunderstanding. But hey, no one is perfect, and that's why we go that route. But with indie game developers, I really like to have more of a hands-on approach, talking to them directly, and because we would like to share our combine our art form, programmer and graphic designers, sound design, and musician joining forces together. It's always a fun experience to do that.
Yeah, collaboration is really the crux of everything. Collaboration and communication is really what it comes down to. Because if you don't have communication from your people up top, if it's not good, and again, this is just me from being in art departments, it makes your job 5,000 times harder and longer than it should.
Of course, and it seems to be that it was those two things that's been the key factor of why this has all gone hideously wrong.
Yeah, and again, I know I'm repeating myself here, but it's it's freaking id Software. They should know better.
Yeah,
they've been around long enough to know a lot better than what they've done on this one.
That's crazy.
It all comes down to one guy, and we all know who that is. He's going for the chop.
Yeah.
Corporations are corporations, but they're still, they're human.
Well, unless you're talking about the Supreme Court's ruling. But yes.
Yes. Yes.
But they are made up of humans and human error and human foibles and all of that good stuff. Yeah, I put my time in and had to leave and start my own business because I couldn't take it anymore.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
But thank you for having us on. It's been really incredible.
It's been wonderful. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up, but we would love to have both of you back at any point when you're free,
Yeah.
No pressure.
Okay, just two more comments that we've had since we finished recording the episode. Eli's come in and stated, Mastodon is silly. Brilliant.
I think if Twitter goes implodes fully, I think Mastodon's probably the best option, but it is quite difficult to navigate. I will say that.
Yeah.
I've heard it's very complicated.
It is.
That's what I've heard about it as well.
Open source tends to be complicated, which is why it's open source and not a finished sellable product.
Isn't one of the Isn't one of the new sort of video platforms like open source? I think it might be Rumble actually. That might be open source.
It wouldn't surprise me. Open source is great because again, you're talking about collaboration. I absolutely love that. And it's great, and it's a great marketplace of ideas. Well, not marketplace, but
I know what you mean. Yeah.
But it's developers. It's people who write stuff. It's not UI. It's not a sellable, marketable.
Makes
product.
sense. Yeah. Eli then came in and put the United Federation of Open Source.
Absolutely.
And Nana put great episode in exclamation mark. Said TJ, I'll check out your game and good luck to both of you on whatever you're working on next.
That's an excellent way.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah.
Whereas Keanu Reeves says, thank you.
That's two impressions we've had from you. Both been pretty good. I thought your Ian McKellen was pretty spot on, actually.
Very good, very good.
Just that's what musicians do. Like we like to play with the voices and sounds, right?
Play with the voices in your head.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we're gonna wrap it up because
Excellent, but I've been dead for a year. Sean Connery, yes. Speaking from the grave.
Like I actually knew that was Sean Connery, so that tells you right there that was excellent.
Amazing.
I am losing my voice now, so because I'm actually a hermit that lives in her basement and doesn't talk to other people out loud. I only talk. So you can always tell in our longer episodes, my voice starts going.
That is fair.
Trust me,
how much of a recluse I actually am.
Yeah, well, I can tell on our first day chats when we plan this.
It just starts going. So thank you so much, chat. You have been wonderful, and our guests have been wonderful.
Amazing.
It's just all been wonderful. We will see you guys next week. All right. Bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.